a good break over Easter and raring to go again. So if we can do apologies first, Emma, and then there are a few new faces, so we'll do a quick introduction so we know who's here. Emma, any apologies?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we have apologies from Jonathan Belford of Aberdeen City Council. Okay, thank you, Emma. And can we just say hello to some new faces then, so that the people on the committee know who we're dealing with here. So I'll just go through who I've got. Michael.
Yes, morning, Michael Wilkie. I'm with KPMG, the external auditor appointed by Audit Scotland.
Okay, thank you for joining us, Michael. Stuart.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me along. My name's Stuart Lamberton. I'm the new Transformation Programme Manager for Strategy, part of Alison's team.
Okay, thank you, Stuart. And Stella? Are you on mute?
Did I say all that with my microphone off?
Afraid so. Communications person.
I want to comment from the City Council's Communications and Marketing team and providing comm support to the partnership.
Okay, thank you. And welcome, Stella. Jamie?
Hi, everyone. Jamie Dale, Chief Internal Auditor.
Thanks, Jamie. And who else is here who's new? Is Amy here?
Yes, good morning. I'm here. It's Amy Richard. I'm Senior Project Manager for Strategy, and I also have a role around some of the coordination for the team.
Okay, thank you, Amy. I think that's everybody. Have I missed anybody who's...
Just Michelle Grant, John. She's
okay, Michelle.
Hi, thanks for that, Alison. My name is Michelle Grant and I'm one of the Senior Project Managers, specifically looking at data and evaluation.
Okay, well, you're all very welcome to the committee, and we look forward to your advice and input. Thank you. So if we can go to item 1, declarations of interest. Are there any today? Okay, I don't see anybody signalling, so we'll record none. Determination of exempt business, item 2.1. There's none on the agenda. Are members thinking that there should be any today? No. Okay, so we'll record none under that. That takes us to item 3.1, page 5. We've got the main pack and we've got a supplementary pack today. So in the main pack, page 5, we've got the minute of the 1st of March. Are there any points of accuracy on this minute that anybody wants to raise? Okay, I don't see any, so if we can record it as an accurate minute, that's fine. Any matters arising on the minute? Okay, Luann?
Thanks, John. I'm just trying to find the section. It was on page 10 of the pack to have a bit of report back on the carer support figures. They were low and I think they were incomplete for that final quarter. Apologies if I've missed an email about that, but I'm not aware of having that update as yet. Thank you.
Can anybody assist with that? I think it's at page 10 at item 11.
Alison, hi. If you want to come in, yeah. Yeah, hi John. Okay, if yes. I can on that, yeah. We are still awaiting the update from our carer support organisation on that. I think there's been a lot of absences, etc. So it's been very difficult to get those figures from quarriers, but we are pursuing that, and we'll email the figures round. In actual fact, we should probably be able to give you the Q4 figures as well, so they'll be as up to date as we can get them.
Okay, thank you. So we'll look forward to that at the next committee in June. Okay, the only other thing I was going to raise on this was that the valedictory, which stands as it is, but it was just a bit premature for Philip is able to join us today, so I jumped the gun a bit there. But the acknowledgement and best wishes are equally well meant today, and we wish you all the best, Philip. And
thanks. So is that me done now? I can go?
No.
Oh, okay. All right.
And obviously, we don't know what happens with the great electorate for other people's input. So I just wanted to acknowledge all the councillors' input to the committee over the past couple of years since I've been chair, and we'll no doubt maybe see some of you back. So we'll see. Okay, so that's the minute. If we can move on to the business planner, which is page 11. Is there anything that you want to highlight here, Alex?
Just nothing to really highlight. I think it's kind of, it speaks for itself. But the bit about just to kind of maybe apologise for the late reports. Obviously, when we're trying to pull these figures together and so on and get all this information pulled together, it is quite you know, we're dependent on ledgers closing and things like that. So we've done really well to get it here today, but just to apologise really for the lack of time that you've had to look at these, but it was best we could do in the circumstances that we had.
Okay, that's I think totally understandable this time of the year, and we've got a full set of comprehensive papers for today. So just on this, I think we're kind of noting that the item at 19, the report on adult social care, which has already been considered in 2 places, so that will not be coming from the planner for this committee. Okay, so otherwise we're happy to note the position on the business planner, and that sets out the committees ahead of us. Okay, so that takes us to item 3.3, which is a verbal update on the whistleblowing. Oh, sorry, Luann.
Yeah, sorry, John, it was just a couple of things to tidy up on the planner that I had queries on. Item 31 and 32 on the planner are both on workforce, and I just wondered if does it make sense to take them as one report, or do they need to be taken separately? It was my first question, and then the other one was just an ask that the directions tracker that we'll get, which is item 27, will that now include, when we get that report, will that include the traffic lights approach, so that it can be highlighted the areas that where there's maybe a delay?
Alex?
Yeah, so yeah, there will be a traffic light approach. I think what we'll need to do is define what the traffic lights mean. So I think that will be, you know, I'm not sure. I mean, it may be a delay, it may be something else. But I think it's maybe more like the delivery of the direction within the document that had been set. So there could be a few things in relation to there, but we'll make sure that we specify out what those traffic lights actually mean within the covering report. And in relation to the primary care and social care vacancies, yes, I think we sent some information round after the last meeting, just providing some information, but there will need to be more. I think those 2 items could be combined, and we will be looking at bringing that around and bringing all that together. So yeah, that's fine. Happy to take those comments.
Okay, thank you for that. Michael, have you got your hand up?
Yeah, sorry, and I would have covered it in my item, but since it's on the planner, I'd discussed with Alex, and this is related to the audit timetable for the council, but we've previously, as you may know, worked to an accelerated audit timetable for the council and for the board in order to complete the audit process early. Given the local government elections and the difficulties we've had in achieving that timetable effectively for the council in the past couple of years, we've agreed to revert to a more traditional timetable for the council audit, and that probably has, to a degree, a knock-on effect on the timing of our work on the joint board as well. So my proposal at the moment is that I think it's unlikely we would bring the audited accounts back to the June meeting, but more likely the August meeting this year.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and that fits with the timetable I think that you have in your paper.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for that, Michael. Okay. Alex, have you got your hand up?
Yeah, we're just going to say that. Yeah, I mean, we're kind of working in it, and you know, we need to work that through at the moment. So I mean, we had some conversations about that and what meetings are likely to come to. So it may be an IJB, it may be a RAPSI meeting, but yeah, it's unlikely that we'll meet that time scale. But we'll need to, you know, Michael and myself will need to sit down and think about what meeting that needs to come to and when it needs to come.
Okay, so we can note that in the minute, and then you can adjust the business planner for June as needed. That's great, thank you. So moving to 3.3, which is the whistleblowing verbal update. Martin, can I bring you in?
Thanks, Chair. Just to inform the committee, there's no incidents raised under either the IJB's whistleblowing policy or Nhs Grampion's whistleblowing standards. The other update to provide the committee with is that I met with Bert Donald, who is an Nhs Grampion board member and champion for whistleblowing, as well as Adam Caldwell, Deputy Chief Executive of Nhs Grampion, to discuss the NHS whistleblowing standards. So I was able to kind of provide a bit of feedback to them, and they're going to meet with the other two partnerships and IJBs as well. I think the upshot will be further promotion of the whistleblowing standards across the system. But as I say, there's no specific incidents raised under either the IJB policy or the NHS standards. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Martin. And I think the whistleblowing is getting higher profile from the Cabinet Secretary as well. And I think there's going to be a meeting, it's probably later this week, is it, Luann, that you're attending with Bert Donald, with the Cabinet Secretary?
Yeah, that's right. Thursday, the meeting is with all the whistleblowing champions and Cabinet Secretary. So we'll get a better steer there from what he'll be looking for going forward.
Okay, thanks. And you can feed back to Martin and Alex if anything relevant from that. It does seem this kind of cross-system governance is something that's being looked at increasingly. So we've got some really good papers today on our governance, but I guess in the next couple of years we'll need to just see how that develops. John.
Yeah, no, it was just to say, at some point in the future, could we have a paper on whistleblowing policy? Not suggesting there's any problem here, but having worked in the banking industry in the past, sometimes no whistleblowing instance means there's not a problem. Sometimes it's meant, I say, particularly in the banking sector, there is a problem, but people are scared to blow the whistle. So it's just kind of to get some kind of sense of the extent to which people are aware of the policies and that sort of stuff. So I say not suggesting there's a problem here, but just from scarred by past experience, should we say.
Yeah, thank you, John. And I know we've covered this once or twice, but Martin, can you just clarify this reporting, is this essentially around the IJB itself as opposed to the Health and Social Care Partnership?
Yeah, so the IJB have got a specific whistleblowing policy, which enables staff members to blow the whistle if required, but also there's separate policies for NHS, so that the NHS whistleblowing standards, and there's also an Aberdeen City Council whistleblowing policy as well.
Mm-hmm. So just to be clear, when you're reporting no incidents, is in relation to the IJB, or is it in relation to all three elements of that?
So there's a requirement to report certainly on the IJB policy to this committee, but also there's a requirement to report on the NHS standards to the IJB, as well as NHS Grampian as well. The ACC policy, I'm not aware that needs to come through this committee. However, we'd be liaising with colleagues in the council on any incidents that were coming through the ACC policy.
Okay, there is something there though about consistency. If we're bringing for staff from NHS Grampian for information and not for the City Council staff who work with us, it seems to be a bit strange, no?
Maybe there's a little bit of comfort there, I suppose, that in the NHS whistleblowing standards, any staff member from the partnership can report through that through those standards. So whether they're from the council or from NHS.
Okay, so the member of staff can choose to go either route through NHS Grampian or to ACC.
Yeah, so I suppose for the NHS whistleblowing standards, they are open to any partnership staff member who believes that there's a need to implement that whistleblowing policy because it's something they've seen in a health setting. So yes, I think there's possibly a gap there in terms of the kind of consistency across the policies. Maybe what Councillor Cook is suggesting is something to kind of explore in a bit more detail in that report, just about where any the good practices, where the gaps are, and maybe how we can further promote the policies to ensure that those gaps are closed.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful if you can reflect on that and bring something back to us in due course. Thank you very much. Luann.
Yeah, I was just going to suggest similar, just something that gives us a whole overview of how whistleblowing is being handled and what we're doing to promote awareness of it, but also what we're doing in terms of the culture within our organisations to make sure people feel comfortable to put their hand up when they've got a problem or when they're uncomfortable with something. So that we're doing lots of preventative whistleblowing activity as well. But maybe something to think about and develop further. But I think a whole, a report outlining the totality of where we are and where we're going to focus attention on would be really useful.
Okay, you're happy with that, Martin?
Yes, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I don't see anybody else signalling on this item. So if we can go on to item 4.1. Page 15 in the main pack. And Alex, can I hand over to you for this?
Yeah. Okay, so we've got in front of us the local code of governance, and this is a document that we've had for some time. It forms a major part of the assurance governance statement within the final accounts. And I think what we've got here is an updated version. What we do is we go through and we update the documents to show that we continue to review and consider the documents that our governance documents, and you can see that and the dates and italics help highlight that within the IJB section. And I've also gone to the council and the NHS, and they've updated their points as well. So it's all been updated in relation to that, and it's gone through the process. So I'm just really, again, it's a paper that's been seen a few times now, but happy to take any comments on it.
Okay, thank you, Alex. Can I open that up for comments and questions? Philip?
Thanks, Chair. Silly question, I probably should know this, but what does EKSF mean? It's in so page 19 under NHS Grampian in that column. EKSF.
Okay, I'm going to see if any of my colleagues have got that. Particularly anybody from the NHS side, because I assume it's their appraisal type of system, but I'm not sure what the acronym stands for myself. Michelle, heard of it?
Sorry, Alex, I missed that. What was the acronym?
EKSF.
It's a mnemonic.
Oh, it's a knowledge and
EKSF.
skills framework, electronic knowledge and skills framework. So it's a lot of the banding is done around certain levels of knowledge and skills framework. So it's a national framework.
Right, thank you.
Saved by Michelle there. We're lucky we had somebody from the NHS on because everybody else was council.
Oops. Luann, can you come in?
Thanks. It was just a suggestion of an addition, but willing to be persuaded otherwise. On principle A, when we're talking about behaving with integrity, commitment to ethical values, I wondered about referencing the IJB development work that we've done with the IJB around culture and with the leadership team, whether that should fit in there. It seems to me quite an important part of what we've done over the past year and will continue.
Chair, I'd be happy to accept that comment and add that into the final version. If we can have it minuted, we'll get that sorted out.
Thanks, Alex.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I don't see anybody else. Can I just ask page 23, I think it is, it's reference to, sorry, page 22, climate change duties and sustainability. Can you just clarify if this is something that is dealt with by the leadership team, or does it come to any committee?
Yeah, this is a report that the IJBs have a duty to complete, or we have a duty to complete the partnerships, and we've been completing that as officers up until just now. As you know, there's been most of the operational responsibility sits with the council and the NHS, so a lot of that fits in, most of that fits into their approach. And that's certainly something that we need to be mindful of, that the operational service delivery and people driving and the buildings all sit with the partner organisations. So there's very little on the IJB one that we do, but I do think, and I was kind of reflecting on this based on some of the conversations, that there may be something that we should be considering in relation to the IJB reports in terms of the green agenda and climate change. So I think if the committee was in agreement, I would be happy to take back a recommendation that one of the implications on our IJB and standard report formats would be in relation to that green agenda.
Okay, well, I'd be happy with that. Is the committee happy with Alex's suggestion there? Yep. Okay. Yeah, if we can minute that, and if you can take that away, thank you, Alex. Are there any other points on this report? As you say, we've seen this and it's developed, and we can now see in Appendix A the position. So going back to the recommendation, which is at page 15 at 2.1, we're asked to approve the sources of assurance as highlighted in Appendix A. The committee content to do that? Okay, thank you. So we can minute that. Thank you. If we can go on to item 4.2, page 29 of the pack, and we've got the review of financial governance arrangements. Again, if you can highlight anything here, Alex.
Yeah, this report was requested the first year we did the audit by Audit Scotland, and we went and assessed ourselves around that, and each year I undertake an annual assessment about where we are in relation to that. One of the points is about the support that I received from the finance teams, and we've also been working on that. But given the change in my role in terms of taking on the deputy chief officer role, I think I've been having discussions with the chief officer about trying identifying additional financial support to help support me undertake both roles just during this period. So that's one of the recommendations that's come back, and something that we've been working on with the chief officer in relation to that. There's a few other things in there that I think, you know, probably in the next report as well, where things have maybe just stalled a little bit because we've been this busy responding to the pandemic. As things are lifting up, we need to start picking up on some of those things, particularly around about, you know, around about some of the training and the financial competencies of staff and so on, and just picking that back up again. So we'll certainly be looking at that over the next financial year.
Okay, thank you, Alex. And yeah, certainly concur. I think as a committee, we have a duty of care towards yourself and the capacity around that. So we welcome seeing the recommendations in due course for the capacity on the financial side. Okay, can I open that up for comments and questions on this report? Philip?
Thanks. I've got a couple of questions. So on page 39, so this is actually, so there's a statement, requirement, make the CFO responsible for ensuring appropriate advice is given on all financial matters, blah, blah, blah. And it's evidenced by the job description. Well, I wouldn't have thought you can evidence what you're doing by your job description. But what I would have thought you could evidence it by is annual assessments. You know, does that happen? So make the CFO responsible for ensuring appropriate advice is given on all financial matters, for keeping financial records and accounts, and maintaining an effective system of financial control. Evidenced by CFO job description.
Yeah, so it is quite difficult to evidence some of these things. So we do have, obviously, if that wasn't within the CFO job description, there would be a little bit of an issue around about that. So that's the first part. I guess the other bit is that we are, I do undergo an appraisal with the chief officer every year and go through quarterly performance meetings with the chief officer as well. I think there is a bit. I take your point, Councillor Bell, and I do wonder whether there is something about some more of a kind of more holistic review of this, maybe with the IJB about the level of financial advice and support that they're given. So I'd certainly be happy to go out to the IJB and seek a view on that if that was what the committee were minded to suggest.
Okay, and so my other question is, part of control is effective tendering, but there's no, I couldn't find any evidence that that is the case. No, hopefully you do effective tendering, but there's nothing in this, you know, there's nothing in the end, there's no statements and there's no evidence by to say that you do effective tendering, because that clearly is a huge part of the control process.
Yeah, we obviously have the financial regulations and the procurement regulations, and part of that is that effective tendering, and that tendering is included within the document. I could add that one in there. I wouldn't have any difficulty. I see that the procurement regs are featured further down. I'd be happy to add it back in. I'd be happy to add it into that one as well.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Philip. And on that latter point. Is that similar to the fact that we have independent audit that plays in? Do we have a what might be deemed a kind of independent procurement team who are involved?
Well, the internal audit function tests the compliance with the procurement regulations regularly. So if they're doing a procurement, providing it's within the scope of the audit, which normally it would have been, then they will be testing that we've complied with the procurement regulations. So that gives you that independent view of that. We do have an independent, or we do have a procurement team that sits out with the IJB, and that's run by the council. It's a shared service with Aberdeenshire and Aberdeen City, and again they're providing us with advice around about maintaining compliance with the procurement regulations as well. So you do get that independent assurance through that route too.
Yeah, so the internal, sorry, the audit one would be evidence if it's in scope, and the procurement team would be a safeguard, if you like, against that. Okay, And then on
sorry, John, just to come back in, your other safeguard in relation to compliance with that is the reports that you receive that are coming forward to the committee, to the IJB, because if it's over £50,000, it needs to come forward to the IJB for approval. And you've seen these reports that have been coming forward from procurement colleagues around about that. So you do get the assurance from there. And these reports are obviously checked off as well before they come through, and they go through an assurance process before they come to you via the legal team and so on.
Okay, so I think that's useful. I think, Emma, if we can capture those points, they're very helpful in terms of bringing the evidence against that. The first point that you raised, Philip, and in terms of a view on that, Alex, this is in terms of the job description and the kind of appraisal. You're going to take that away and come back with some view on that.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I think it would be worthwhile. I take Philip's point. I think it's a very good point about, you know, it is quite difficult to evidence some of this thing. So I think there could be something that could be done around about that, and it's certainly something I'd be happy to have a look at and work on, just to see what we can put in place to provide a little bit more assurance around about that function.
Okay, thank you. I think that's welcome. And although we see this, it is building up that security, if you like, around the governance and evidence. So that's great. Okay, don't see anybody else signalling, but I've got a question on page 40, and it's to do with the assurance from ACC and NHS Grampian. So the evidence for that you've got in the annual accounts. So is that again primarily through the audit functions that we're drawing the evidence?
Yes, I mean, the audit functions provide evidence, but in relation to the annual accounts, the governance statement has assurance from ACC and NHS Grampian in it. So they've provided us with that assurance as well. So that's where the reference comes from in relation to the financial, in relation to that. A lot of and that governance statement is, you know, they've got their own internal controls and so on around about that, their own external audit and internal audit as well around about there, but we're certainly taking assurance from that, and they've provided us with information in our governance statement which helps to support that, support the point around about the internal controls that are applicable on their side. And we need to remember that a lot of the controls are in the partner organisations.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Alex. Are there any other questions or comments on this? Okay, I don't see any. So can I take us to the recommendation on page 29 at 2.1? It's recommended that the committee note the contents of the report and the accompanying results of the executive team review contained in Appendix A. Is the committee content with that and to accept that recommendation? Okay, thank you. Okay. So if we can go on to item 4.3, and this is at page 45, the annual governance statement. Alex.
Yeah, the governance statement forms part of the annual accounts, and you'll see that in one of the later submissions. And this is really about just getting approval of that governance statement from the audit committee. I've highlighted the changes in italics that we've made and provided an update in relation to some of that stuff. I think just picking up again on the point at the last meeting, if there was a problem within the internal control frameworks of either the council or the NHS, and that was picked up via the internal or external auditors, then that may have an impact on our governance statement. But there's nothing that's been highlighted to me that's that I feel that we need to make reference of in relation to that, and vice versa. If there was something that was highlighted of significant risk or issue within our governance statement, then the council and the NHS may want to reflect that within their own. But again, nothing has been notified. You see in there, Jamie's provided some wording around about the around about the internal control framework, and there's a short report that we've attached to the back of that as well. There'll be further information on the internal control framework coming, I think, to the next meeting. Happy to take any comments.
Thanks, Alex. Okay, open that up for comments. Luann?
Just the same comment that on the culture work and the development work, maybe going under Principle 1 to highlight our commitment to our IGB development work.
Yeah, I'm happy to accept that. We can make that amendment in the audit of the accounts.
Okay, thank you. And Philip?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So it's really just going back to what I was saying previously. I mean, one of the the 7 principles, maybe there should be 8 principles of effective governance. Tendering, I mean, effective tendering and how that is actually undertaken. Because I can, so when something gets signed off, whether it be 50,000, 500,000, you can sign off anything, but if you haven't had effective tendering, then you could be signing off. You can see what I'm getting at. So that must be one of the principles I would have thought. Effective tendering and how it's all controlled and managed, and and the processes that you should be adhering to.
So the principles themselves are actually derived from a document, a document in terms of local code of governments. So that's where those come from, and they match the principles that have been used by the council as well. So there's a certain linkage in relation to that. But the procurement does feature significantly within the assurance statement. So there is mention within there of the £50,000 on one of the bits, and certainly we place a lot of the reliance on going through the procurement and tendering processes. So certainly it is mentioned within there, but I'm not sure that we could make another principle in relation to that. I think procurement is at the heart of a number of these principles.
Okay.
So Philip, is it a question of that being pulled out more explicitly in the different papers?
Well, I would have thought so, Chair. So I mean, there's been lots of tendering going on over the past years that I've been on this committee, but as a committee member, I don't actually see the nitty-gritty part of that tendering process. It just gets presented as a fait accompli. So if there's nothing actually, so if that isn't so spelled out in how these processes are actually carried out, then I wouldn't say I'm assured.
Yeah, so it's the kind of operational side of the procurement being robust is what you're getting at.
Yeah.
Okay. Luann, did you want to come in on this part, or is this different?
No, it's a similar thread. I was recently on counter fraud training with the health board, and some of what came up was the risks around procurement and how we need to make sure that we're doing competitive procurement. There's no conflicts of interest are being managed. We're not just doing procurement through any inappropriate ways. And I wondered, I was going to ask, when we got to the external audit, how much of the external audit looks at our procurement processes to make sure that we are doing things transparently and we're not at risk of doing things inappropriately, and we're doing that in an open and competitive way. So I don't know if is that covered in our external audit? I wonder if it's along a similar line to what Philip has been asking about.
Okay, we'll hold that because Jamie wants to come in as well. So Jamie, are you contributing on this discussion?
Sorry, thank you very much. Just to provide some assurance around the procurement aspect. So that is something which we do look at from an Aberdeen City Council perspective. Encompassing in any samples, for example, would be work of the IGB, the Health and Social Care Partnership. So where those reports don't necessarily come to the committee. We limit those to the actual health and social care partnership reports. That work is carried out annually by internal audit for the council, for the IGB, for the health and social care partnership. So I would hope that the committee could take assurance from that I have no issues to raise around that. We do have issues at the minor significant level, but nothing significant enough that would not provide assurance to the committee. Again, I can maybe talk to Alex and the relevant on the city side, but if procurement is something you are very interested in, maybe going forward we could amend the reporting to this committee that, as well as providing the own IGB reports, anything health and social care partnership from the council, we could also provide the procurement if that is an area you feel you need assurance on. But at this stage, I've got no concerns to raise.
May I come back in, please, Chair?
Sure.
So what I wasn't actually alluding to brown paper bags or any sorry, inappropriate behaviour. What I was alluding to though was procurement processes I've been involved in the past, bids I've been involved in the past. You've actually had the appropriate disciplines actually involved with the bid process. So what I'm thinking of is this. It could be in this case, it will be a service, it could be a particular drug, it could be, anything. Now, you will go out to tender and you will get the best price. But how do you know you're getting the best item? How do you know that what is being offered is actually what you actually want? So you have to actually, so the way you actually go about doing this, and I've seen these examples on several occasions in the past in the council, which just haven't been right, because there haven't been the right disciplines there to actually provide the necessary knowledge to get a good, to do a good bid tabulation, a good bid review.
Okay, yeah, Alex.
So the way that you get get that assurance is through the performance management or the contract management of the contract that was approved. So there should be regular contract monitoring with the successful contractor to go and do that. So that's where that assurance comes from. And again, that function is reviewed by the external audit, the internal auditor, sorry, via because they will audit, and they have audited in the past the contract management of our social care providers. And the process that's in place in relation to that. One of the things that came up during that process was evacuation plans or continuous resilience plans, let's say. So that was one of the things that was highlighted through that audit, and then we went away and worked with the providers on bringing that forward. The process that you've outlined there in relation to, that you go through, if you're buying something like a commodity, is relatively simple. So if you were buying something, I don't know, cars or welly boots or something like that, where you actually get that, then that it's quite a simple process in terms of the procurement and then evaluating it from there. In social care, it's a little bit more sophisticated than that, because we need to work with the providers on the level of care and the care that they're providing. So if we take, for instance, one of the procurement processes that we recently went through was in relation to care at home, where we had we worked with the providers and we did a lot of engagement with the providers at the outset to actually discuss what that care at home model was going to look like, and then we went out to tender on that basis. It was the same tender process, and then 3 bids came in, or bids came in. The bids were evaluated against each other, and then it was agreed that we would go with one provider. Now, I meet with that provider every quarter, and sometimes more often than that, to go through performance and to work our way through that. And I do that with the contracts team there, and we'll be having discussions not just about the level of service that's being provided, but also about the outcomes that are being achieved for the social for the patients or the people who we're caring for. So there is a little bit a difference in relation to some of the services that we purchase within social care, but certainly the principles remain the same, that we've got robust processes in relation to what we go through, and we've also got a robust contract monitoring process to make sure that what we're getting, what we've paid for, and so on. I think in relation to the point that you're making in relation to the document itself, I can see a couple of places where I could add. So I've used financial regulations in some respects as a shorthand for procurement regulations, because where I came from, the financial and the procurement regulations were included in the same document. But what I'm happy to do is to expand that out a little bit, to make it in the assurance statement to actually provide more information on the procurement side of things. And as Jamie's offered to undertake, you know, to have a look at the scope and see what we can do around about providing you with assurance around about the decisions that have been made in relation to procurement, then I think we should probably have had these bits. That hopefully that gives you enough assurance to close that one off.
May I come back, please? This will be the final time, Chair.
Mm-hmm.
I hate to labour this, but your example of welly boots was actually a very good example, Alex. So now you might think that you know, you're buying welly boots and you're buying them so you don't get your feet wet, or if they're, you know, someone's in an operating theatre, you know, they're nice clean welly boots. It's to stop blood. But what happens if you're actually wandering about and there's other chemicals around, and you find those chemicals actually you know, leach into the boot and actually damage the, you know, the foot. So the point I'm making is you need to have the appropriate disciplines involved in the procurement process to ensure you're actually getting what you want. It could be the most cost effective, but it might not be exactly what you want. I'm sorry to labour it, but it's quite important.
And I think one of the bits I would say is that's where the evaluation process comes in terms of the tender evaluation. I mean, price will only be one element. Quality is another element in relation to that. And certainly, if I look at the you know, some of the stuff that we've done in the past, I mean, you can see there's a weighting against what, you know, weighting against there. If the welly boots leaked, then I would be expecting that to be fed back through the performance management and you know, for repercussions to be undertaken with the provider, either in terms of working their way through the contract to get that money returned, or, you know, going back to see where it comes from there. So there's certainly a robust process around about that, and that process needs to be fed by, so for instance, the people who are using the welly boots need to be telling that they're leaking, and that's the first instance. You know, that's the contract managers need that, because they need to go back and make that point to the provider and then start those conversations. And if that needs to go down the contractual route as a result of that, then that's something that we need to happen.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks. I've got Luann and Jamie. Luann?
Thanks. I'm just listening to that, and I'm wondering if it would be a useful thing to have a seminar maybe for IJB members on our ethical approach to commissioning and how that's really been seen as good practice, but also beneath that, what are the safety mechanisms that are in place to make sure that we're focusing still on quality, value for money and fairness, you know, and taking into account the competitive landscape that we're working in. I think I probably feel more assured because I've been, in a previous life, I've been on the other side of commissioning from Aberdeen Health and Social Care Partnership. So I know that there's a kind of a shutter that comes down at a point when we're getting close to procurement, to a procurement process. But I wonder if that would be a useful exercise to take IJB members through so that we can just dig into that and look at that detail.
Okay, let's just hold that a minute and we'll come back to it. Jamie, do you want to come in?
Thank you very much, Chair. And I can't give assurance of things that have came before my time in position, but to come back on what was raised, certainly one of the audit tests I would be asking my team to do if we were carrying out a procurement review would be around the composition of the panel, so as to make sure that they did have the correct people in place. So yes, we would test to make sure that it was just best value and not just the cost or the quality, but we would certainly look at the composition of the panel. Like I said, I don't know if that's came in the past, but certainly for any procurement reviews going forward, that'll be one of the audit tests I'll ask the team to undertake.
Okay, thank you, Jamie. Picking up on on the various points that have been raised here. So Alex, you're going to have a look at the documents and in terms of bringing in some of the points. And Jamie, you're going to liaise with Alex, but sort of on that procurement side. And Luann, your suggestion of a seminar or workshop around this sounds very helpful, because we've also got changes in personnel around commissioning. So I think that will be helpful for us. But also, if we have new people around the IJB in the committee, because as Aunt Philip says, this is a key element, and it's incumbent on us as board members, committee members, to, and I'm just lodging this in my head as the welly boot discussion, that when procurement comes up, these are key questions that we should be asking and satisfying ourselves on. So that it's something for us as board members, committee members as well around this. So I think that's been a very helpful discussion. There's 2 or 3 action points around that. Emma, if you can capture those in the minute for us. Okay. Luann, did you want to come back in? No. Alex, are you content with that, or did you have any final comment?
No, that's fine. I'm happy to do that. Happy to have a workshop on it. So if Emma and Amy can keep a note of that and add it to our tracker, we'll get that on there and we'll get something sorted out.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody. That's been really helpful, and thanks for prompting that, Philip, because I think it's important. We've got pretty robust documents here, but just getting continuous improvement around this is helpful. And yeah, I hadn't clocked this beforehand reading this, but we will have new people around the IJB, and the criticality of this does make a workshop in early course a good idea. So thank you, everybody, for your contributions. So if we can go to, I think it's on page 45, where 2.1 we're asked to approve the governance statement at Appendix A and note the statement from the Chief Internal Auditor at Appendix B. Are we content for that as a committee? Yeah. Okay.
Agree.
Alex?
Yeah, I just wondered if there was something around about just if reflecting or something, just a recommendation about reflecting the changes in relation to procurement in the final version.
Yes, okay. And if we capture in the text,
yeah,
that would be helpful. Yeah, because I'm not one for us having verbatim minutes, but I think the key points from that discussion are worth capturing. So yes, let's include a C on that basis. You okay with that, Emma? Yeah, okay, thank you. Thank you, everybody. Okay, can we go on to item 4.4, which is the review of duties. So page 63 of the pack. And this is fairly straightforward, but Alex, did you have any introductory comment?
Not really. Just to say that some of those duties that are in here are stuff that that we've they're as and when we require them. So there's something around about that in relation to that. On some of these, you wouldn't expect to actually have seen anything coming through in relation to them, because it's either if the committee has recommended something. So for instance, the evaluation that was recommended earlier would potentially feed into a report that might tick one of the boxes in relation to the terms of reference for this committee. So there's stuff, there's ones that don't have anything against them, and that's okay in that regard. But as long as the main ones in the spirit of them we've had a report on, and I feel we have had that during the last year.
Okay, then that's helpful, because yes, going through, I think it's at 9 and 17. There's blanks there, and it was a question of whether we're missing something. But I think your explanation is helpful on that. But we can be mindful as a committee in relation to performance reviews or focus on value for money. Okay, so can I open that up for any comments on this? Luann?
Really just to say thanks to Alex and the team for doing this work over the last year, considering the context of COVID and then Omicron. I think it's really impressive that all this work has been completed. So thanks, Alex and the team.
Okay, yes, if we can minute that on behalf of the committee, thanks, Luann. And this is it's a straightforward report, but it's extremely helpful for us to make sure that we're covering the bases as a committee, both in looking back, but also looking forward to the year coming up. And there may be some adjustments to the timing as we go forward, but at least that would then feature in terms of the business planner, and we can see that we cover those bases. Okay, so on page 63, we've got, we're asked to note the content of Appendix A in relation to this. So, and we're happy to do that.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay, thank you very much. So that takes us to item 5.1, and we've got two bits to this. We've got in the main pack at page 81, and then some supplementary paper in the supplementary pack as well. So the unaudited financial accounts, we're being asked to approve these. Okay, Alex, anything as an introduction?
On mute there. Just to kind of, there's a couple of bits, and I notice the index needs to be updated a little bit. But I think what we've done is try to pull this together as quickly as we possibly could within the time frame. I'm really grateful to Martin and Alison and the accountants, and I think it would be really worthwhile just minuting my appreciation for their work in relation to this. I could maybe give the names to Emma out with, but I think it's really important because they worked really hard over the last few weeks to get this together. There's a couple of bits that we're, so the pension figures will be updated, and that's not material in relation to what we've got in front of us today. And the final thing that we will be looking at is I suppose the balance. So we've got a significant balance at the end of the year, and most of that is due to income that's come in late in the financial year. So we've got that, and we've ring fenced some of that for COVID, and the rest of it we have. There's about 10 million of it that we've had to ring fence for things like PSIP and EDP. And then the rest of it has been put into the Integration and Change Fund, which is what we've traditionally done with funding that's available. So that funding will now need to be allocated towards transformation or integration and change, and that will need to link in with the strategic plan that hopefully we'll get approval for in June, and that's kind of where we are from there. So there is a sizable balance on there. Some of that money will need to be, or a lot of that money will need to be used for the whole system, and that's certainly something that we're working on in relation to how we do that.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. Yeah, and I've got one or two points around that, but if I open it up for anybody else who've got comments on this paper. Okay, just while I'm waiting for, Luann, please.
It's comments on the same point, John, so I'm happy for you to go if you want.
No, you head on, and if
Okay.
I've got anything in addition, I'll do it.
I suppose interested just to understand a bit more what the process will be around making decisions around how the reserves we have are spent. What assurance we'll have that it's about thinking about sustainability, because it is one-off. We should be treating it as one-off funding. So thinking of clear exit strategies, making sure that it is tied to our strategy and we don't have mission drift based on maybe other competing agendas. So that's kind of what's in my head. And two specifics would be, will there be a requirement to come to IJB for decisions on the spend for this money? And secondly, has there been any contact with the new Centre for Sustainable Delivery and how they might be able to help us with this using innovation, but then how that then gets scaled up. So sorry, a lot in there, but if you get the gist.
Alex?
Yeah, and I think Luann, you probably summed up a lot of my thinking in relation to what's what we need to do. But I think so a couple of bits I would say is that the money that's in there for COVID, we're going to need that money within the whole system to help support us this financial year. So it's great that we've got that money, because we will have probably supplier sustainability schemes and stuff like that that needs to be supported in relation to the additional costs of COVID. So we've got that money, which is really helpful in that. In relation to the decisions that need to be made in relation to how the other money is spent, then that will need to come through the IJB. And it will have to be linked to the strategic plan, and probably the kind of more operational element that's in a result of that. The trick for the IJB will be how we use this money to facilitate change, but have clear exit strategies from this when the time comes, given that that is a one-off in relation to that. As I talked about before, in relation to kind of whole system, we don't really want vanity projects coming through here or whatever. We want projects that help support pathways and support the whole system, rather than it being focused on one part. There may need to be some element of that, but it should be a relatively small element, to be honest. That's where I want to see it going. Certainly that's what the discussions will need to be focused around. Obviously, the big problem we've got within the North East, as we know, is around the workforce and actually people to deliver on some of this stuff. And that would be a challenge. We know that the workforce will be potentially be recurring. It's easier to make the workforce recurring when you get them in than not. So there could be something around about that, and certainly we need to start doing some financial modelling about that. If we were to take on additional staff, what would we do with the additional staff at the end of the contract period? Could we integrate them into our mainstream budgets using some of the vacancies that are around about there? So there are things that we can do around about that, but we're going to have a pretty sophisticated approach now. We use this funding, have clear exit strategies, and know what we're going to be doing before we sign off on any of these projects, and have assurance around about that. We haven't contacted that sustainable innovation group that you've talked about, but I'm certainly happy to link up and have a conversation with them on that basis.
Okay, thanks, Luann. That's pretty much where I was going to be coming from on this. So that's welcome. I think that's really important that the IJB will be involved in the decisions, and I think that the whole system element is we will be, well, I would suggest if we're looking at the portfolios and those pathways, I think we probably will want to have some line of sight on how partners are investing as well as ourselves, because like I think you're alluding to, Alex, some of our investment will work right across that pathway and some of theirs will as well. So it makes it a bit more complicated, but in some ways we get more traction on what the impact is for the public. So my plea, and we'll maybe discuss this further when we get to the leadership objectives, would be clarity as far as we can on the modelling between need or demand and capacity, and that links up to the workforce as well. So I think getting sight of that will be important, and maybe there's going to be some informal discussions needed as well, Luann, potentially around getting our head around that, rather than just in the more formal committee and IJB space. But no, I'm assured on the basis that you're going to take forward that 50 million, because I think we have to view it, do we, as pretty much a one-off, because things are going to be tight in the coming years?
That's the information that's coming back, is that it's going to be tight going forward. And yeah, I mean, things can change. You just never know what's going to happen, especially at this time of year. But certainly the implications are that things will be tight. From an IGB perspective, we're probably in a bit more of a fortunate position in that there was significant resources put into the IGBs, and that will help support the IGBs. But in terms of helping to support the wider system, my understanding is things will be tight going forward.
Okay, so can I just ask one other one? So potentially this will be held in the reserves this year, but could, depending on when we're planning transformation or transitional projects, it could be over 2 or more financial years that the spend takes place.
Yeah, I mean, my advice would be that we need to allocate as quickly as we can around about this. But I think what we also need to be mindful of is that this could cross financial years, and if it does, you can do that. There's only one in there that may cause a problem in regard to that, and that's the complex care. And there's about £800,000 that's in there now. The requirements around about that money that it should be spent by March 2023. So we will need to keep a closer eye on that one and just make sure. But we've already starting to have some discussions around about what we could potentially use that for in terms of complex care. And it's the same issue that we discussed earlier, is that, you know, it costs £250,000 for a complex care person a year in a facility, and you know, there's obviously an ongoing recurring cost of that, but there's obviously, there may be some costs around about the facility that we could invest that in.
Okay, and then on the additional pack, it sets out at page 36 the reserves under those 3 headings: supporting cash flow, risk fund, and earmarked funding. So that gives an indication of the scale of what we're looking at as well. Okay. Okay. Any other questions around this? The papers that we have on this. Okay. So we're being asked to note the reports and to approve also. Oh no, hang on, I'm jumping the gun here. Hang on, sorry, that's the next report. Let me just go back to this one. So page 81, which is the original. I'm toggling between the papers here. On the original pack. So we've been asked to give comments on these accounts at Appendix A. And so what are we actually doing with this, Alex? We're noting it, and then the final accounts will come through.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, we're noting that, and then yeah, it'll come through through that basis. Yep. Okay. And then that allows me to pass the information over to the auditors for them to be audited. Okay, that's fine then. So the committee are happy to, we've commented on the paper that we've got, and we're happy for that to be the next step.
Yeah, agreed.
Thank you very much. Okay. Is everybody happy just to continue with the meeting rather than take a comfort break? You just press on. Okay. I'm happy to take a comfort break if anybody needs that. Okay, Alex, you've still got your hand up? Yeah, I was just looking, John. There's supposed to be the Q4 monitoring in the papers, and I'm not seeing it. Is it? I think there was 3 reports to come forward, or 2 reports to come forward, because we had the Q4 monitoring as well, which provided more detail on the 51 million and the reasons for the movement. But it looks like it's maybe been. Oh no, I found. No, we've got it. Oh, you got it. All right. I must have. Yeah. I must have. I thought I'd lost it. I couldn't find it there. Yeah. Between too many versions. Apologies, colleagues. We found it. Right. Okay. Yeah. We're in business. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm just trying to make sure I've got the right paper up here. So we're going to item 6, which is page 51 of the late circulation. Let me just get to that, and then we'll confirm. Right, this is the Q4 monitoring paper. Okay. So Alex, you're in the hot seat all the time here. So over to you. Just to introduce.
often happens at this meeting, unfortunately. But so we pulled together the monitoring up into that thing. I mean, you expected that there would be some movements. I said at 31st of December there would be likely movements, and the reason for that was that I was aware there was a significant amount of money potentially in relation to the winter funding that was going to impact on what we were doing. And we also knew that we weren't going to spend all the money on our funds, but because we know we have to ring fence that money and carry it forward, that I had, I'd kind of taken a very prudent view in terms of the forecast at that point in time. So the table kind of reflects what's happened in relation to the monitoring, and you can see there that our mainstream position was underspent by about 6.9 million. We had winter funding monies that we weren't able to move forward, and we knew there was a risk of underspend on those funding, on that funding, and that's accounted to 4.2 million. We have the funds, and we talked about them already in terms of PSIP, ADP, and so on. And due to recruitment challenges in the Northeast, we're struggling to do that. And then we have this additional money that came in for COVID-19 in the final quarter, and that sort of reflects the difference and the reason why we're at 33,156. And when we add that to our amount that was in reserves from the previous year, that brings you to the 51 million. The costs, the direct costs of COVID have all been funded, is what we had, and the indirect costs as well. We had some concern about that last year in terms of 2020-21, but that's all been funded and all been resolved, and the position looks looks good at this point in time. The stuff that we've seen near the end was that we had more underspends in relation to staffing is one thing, particularly within community health services and on the frailty budget, and we've also seen some the underspends on older people, and that's one of our biggest budgets. But that's really in relation to some of that winter money as well. Although we're undertaking a more detailed review on that one, just to get to the bottom of exactly what's happened there. So and it's quite favourable in terms of where we are. We've got funding to help support us next year, and I'm pleased to present this position to the committee.
Okay, thank you for that. And it's yes, the overview and then the breakdown later on is really helpful. And I think what it shows is on the financial position how we're in a good place. I suppose the question is, and it's a separate point, is any under provision in terms of need in the community, which is something we can return to at another point in terms of performance. But on this paper, are there any questions for Alex? John?
Thanks. Yeah, I just had a couple of questions on page 59, I think it is. Sorry, I'm just swapping between screens. Yeah, page 59, on mental health and addiction. We've got an overspend of 552k, and then the text in the box seems to finish in mid-sentence.
Yeah.
Apologies for that format error. The rest of that line says something about the overspend being in relation to mental health outcomes.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry. With something like that, I would normally have given you advance notice.
No,
I
it's
only
fine.
finished reading the papers yesterday evening.
No, it was there on the, you know how it is. It was there on the version when I sent it through, but sometimes when it gets PDF'd and printed, it drops it off. But we'll certainly have to look at that.
That's fine.
Yeah,
no, we've all done that. Certainly I have anyway. Next question, same page. Minus some in the wider scheme of things. The directorate, on the directorate spend, it talks about a 357k overspend, and then the commentary says 220k overspend on commissioning services. So again, relatively minor in the wider scheme of things. Just wondering what the other 120k is, or 130k.
I would have to have to have a look at that one, John, just to get more detail around about it. But I think in terms of that directorate budget, my observation would be that, you know, we let it go through, but we probably should have done some sort of a budget environment between that and older people, just to move some of the budget provision out of there to sort that one out. And that's certainly, but we left it the way it was just to provide some sort of clarity around about that. There will be some other odds and sods in there making up that 120, and I'll certainly get more information for you out of the meeting and pass that over in relation to that.
Yeah, not a big deal. As I say, it's a relatively small thing in the wider scheme of things. And then I had one more. Sorry, again, flip between screens. Yeah, again, not a huge thing. Just the primary care services overspend. Again, most of the commentary appears to talk about actual underspends. So we've got some underspends offsetting a bit of an overspend. So I just wonder if you give us a bit more detail on that one.
Yeah, I think what happened in relation to that one is that, you know, that budget has traditionally underspent every year. And what we did then was that we took some of the funding out of there and put it to we did a budget environment earlier in the year in relation to the out of area budget. So over the last 2 or 3 years, that's always underspent by 600k. So I was a wee bit surprised to see that one overspending by a couple hundred. But I suspect there'll be something in there in relation to some of the additional costs that we've had to bear in relation to Carden, in relation to the changes that we made there, because once that one went, we had some additional property costs and so on and around about that. But I'll confirm that. But there's two reasons for that. Could be due to additional costs of Carden, but also potentially we've maybe moved too much money out of there when we did that allocation at the start of the financial year.
And that's it. That's all I had on that one.
So those will be corrected in due course, will they?
So what we would do is we'll reflect that in next year's budget. So we'll need to now, you know, once we've got the final results just now, I mean, we've done obviously the medium-term financial framework. We did an initial budget allocation based on that, and now that we've got the final position for the year, we'll tidy things up again for this year.
Thank you. Luann?
Thanks, John. My question was, again, page 59, same as John's, but it's on hosted. And I note the position there. I see we're getting a report on hosted to the next RAP committee in June, and I just wanted to clarify, what will that report contain, and will it speak to specifically the issue around GMED that we're seeing here? But I just want to get a sense of what is going to be in the report coming to RAP in June, around how we're dealing with hosted.
See, Alison's put her hand up. I think she's working on something.
Alison?
Thanks. Yeah, in terms of the hosted report that's coming in June, that is just the SLA that we're developing for sexual health services. So that report is quite specific. I know there's discussions ongoing at the North East Partnership group around about more wider hosted services. So I'm not sure if there is an ask coming from there for us to consider that within our IGB area. GMEDs in particular, I think that's Murray that hosts that.
Yeah, I suppose it's the basis of the sharing between the hosted and then what can come through once that's been shared. So there's maybe a process issue there as to how that is handled. Alex?
Yeah, so in relation to GMED, so significant. I mean, we've invested in GMED a couple, you know, and they've changed them. They changed the model, so the model is now better as a result of the investment that's being made and the decisions that have been made around about that. But there is a little bit of a gap in terms of the funding, and we need to have a look at that and see what we can do to resolve that. I would have thought that should have been something that would have been picked up on the information that's coming back to the committee in terms of giving some high level overview for that. But I think what we all need to do, again, it comes back to the position that we're speaking about, is potentially look to reallocate some additional money in there, or do something along that line just to cover that one off, because the model is working and providing you know, better outcomes than it once was.
Okay. Okay, Luann?
I can just come back. So just on the Northeast group, we had a presentation on GMEDs last year and got an update on the new model, and it sounded very positive. Maybe there's an ask to go back to Murray about when we'll get an update on, you know, how things have shifted and how we expect things to look in the future. That might be, I wonder if that's a reasonable ask from this committee through our chief officer. To go to Murray. And I think, John, you're right, there's a process that's not clear at the moment about how that update happens, but I think it's fair enough to raise it through this group.
Okay, we're happy to minute that and pursue that. Okay, and that will feed into Alison and Alex. Okay, thank you. Alison, did you want to come back?
Yeah, sorry, thanks, John. What I should have said is, at the same time, when we bring our hosted services report on sexual health services to our governance processes, I understand both Shire and Murray are taking reports through their own governance processes as well. Now, it could be that when the SLAs are agreed within each partnership area that has responsibility for hosting, that they are then shared around the other governance processes, whether that's IJBs or committees that the reports are going to. So I'm not sure whether the GMED SLA will make its way through our processes at some point in the future. So sorry, I should probably have added that to my comment earlier on. Okay, thank you, Alison. And Luann, I think you currently chair that Northeast group, is that right? As chair of our IJB. Yeah, if that's being looked at, that will be in June, will it?
Yeah, we're just looking at getting a date for June to accommodate councillors, as yet unknown. So yeah, but it likely will have a June meeting.
Okay, thank you. Philip.
Thank you, Chair. Say to Luann, good luck with that. Councillors, as yes unknown. But I've got a couple of questions. So page 59, by purest of coincidences, honestly, I haven't just spotted it. I did actually highlight them at 7 o'clock this morning. So there's a line, mental health and addictions, 125,000 over recovered income, mostly client receipts. What does that mean?
So there's two elements. That means that if you get social care from the council, that there's an element of that an element you need to pay for that social. So it goes through the charging framework, and a charge is there is delivered out as a result of that. So we've received more income than we had anticipated in relation to those client receipts.
Okay, well, I thought that was the case. So how could you have received more income? Because people have paid, do you mean? Or they were charged too much?
No, people were paid, you know, the client group changes quite frequently, so it'll depend on how that's financially assessed via the financial assessment team. And if more people have more income to put in, then you could over deliver on that. So it's not as if we've charged stuff that we shouldn't have been charging. It's actually a case of just in relation to the and in relation to the group of clients we had at that point in time and their financial position.
Okay, thanks. So going down, some on page 59, and it's this COVID-19 costs, 17.2 millions fully recovered. But the last sentence says the costs were fully funded, and the budget also contains a further 18 millions to cover COVID costs in future years. So what sort of things did you have in mind there in future years? Vaccinations, maybe, or?
Yeah, there will be a bit. There'll be a bit. So there is some money that's come in for vaccination centrally, but you know we need to kind of work on what the vaccination model looks like going forward. And certainly there's been a lot of work done in Aberdeen City, and the IJB received some of that at a previous meeting. But it really depends on the number of vaccines that need to be given and when and the timing and so on. But I would have thought vaccinations would be one of the things potentially could be funded from there. But the main thing that I think we will have will be supplier sustainability for social care. So the social care providers get funding for the additional staff that they need at the moment as a result of COVID. And that could be because they're separating their staffing models. So there's a risk of less cross-contamination and things like that, or also because they've got additional costs in relation to cleaning or PPE. So these things are all claimed through a supplier sustainability scheme. And that will be an additional cost to the IJB that in the last 2 years has been funded via those funds.
Okay, thanks. So just a little supplemental, please, if I may. So with regard future boosters, vaccination boosters, so you haven't been told yet exactly who is going to get boosted and when, have you?
Not,
I mean,
not
I know
that,
75-year-olds are now,
yeah.
but what about the rest of us?
It's not an area that I'm overly familiar with at the moment, Councillor Bell, but my understanding is that, it evolves and we take the advice from the GCVI in relation to who should be vaccinated when. But if you're asking if I've got a blueprint for when everybody's going to get their next booster, I'm not sure that I've got that, and I'm not sure if the operational staff do either, to be honest.
Okay, I was just really more curious as to whether you had enough money to finance it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Philip. I've got one question. It's Appendix D, page 63. So we're noting that the savings due to the COVID situation haven't been realised. They're listed as undeliverable. And I know this is about the last financial year. So are we taking similar savings into the next financial year, or what's the anticipated situation given COVID now?
So the risk, so those savings were built into the budget on a recurrent basis, and but the risk going forward is that some of the stuff that we've done isn't there in the future years. So I'm reasonably comfortable with the last one, but the other two, in terms of managing demand and actually managing demand, kind of reasonably comfortable with there. The risk around about savings that we've put in previous will be around about turnover savings that we've used previously, or like short-term savings that have come forward via staff, the difficulties recruiting staff. So we need to kind of be mindful of that, and that's certainly something that we'll be keeping a close eye out for. It's about, will we see the same level of staff turnover and staff vacancies that we've had in previous years? And that's something that the leadership team will need to consider closely over the next year. But that is the risk. Some of that risk, I'd say, I've de-risked that situation in terms of the 5.5 by some of these things we have been able to make permanent in its approach.
Okay, so we'll just need to keep an eye on that as we go forward. Yeah.
The biggest risk, John, is staffing and in relation to there, because you can become a bit complacent in relation to the level of vacancies and so on. If that situation improved, which in some respects we hope it will do, because that will help in terms of service provision, and then that could have a financial consequence. I don't think that'll be a risk so much next financial year, but in future financial years it'll be a risk for public sector bodies in the North East.
Yeah. Okay. And that all kind of has, this is financial we're looking at, but that has broader impact on the pressures on the staff who are trying to do it without with vacancies, as well as any unmet demand. So okay, that clarifies that. So on this then, can I take us to page 52, where we have the recommendation. So we're asked to note the report in relation to the IJB budget and the information on areas of risk and management action that are contained there, and also to approve the budget environments in Appendix F. We happy to do that? Okay, thank you. So that takes us on to item 6.1 and gives Alex a bit of respite as we turn to Michael. If you'd like to introduce your report, please.
Yeah, no problem, thank you. This is Audit Strategy, being the 6th year of our appointment as auditor that was extended for a year by Audit Scotland and the Accounts Commission. So fairly familiar with what members will have seen before. The strategy sets out the key aspects of my planned audit approach that I consider necessary ultimately to be able to issue an opinion on the accounts in due course. I'm continuing in role as the engagement leader and supported by Matt Moore as engagement manager. I'll just mention a couple of pages of our report in passing, and then some overall points. Page 80, first of all, summarises the approach that we've taken to materiality, and that is the number which ultimately I consider could affect the users of the financial statements and which drives the extent of audit testing throughout the audit. I've set materiality on a consistent basis with prior year being 1% of expenditure. So at planning, that's around 3.7 million. But we design our procedures to a lower level of precision, 75% of that number, so 2.8 million, in order to make sure that we would identify any misstatements that cumulatively could be over that threshold. And then as we go through our work and bring a report back to the committee, having concluded our testing, I will report any misstatements that we identify, whether or not they've been adjusted by management, if those misstatements exceed £185,000. That said, if there was a misstatement that I considered by its nature you would be interested in, for example, related to senior staff remuneration disclosures, then I would still report that in any case, even if it was below that threshold. And from page 81 onwards, there's some tables which set out what I consider to be the risks facing the audit, or those which I want to draw your attention to. The first two are what are defined as significant risks, and those are presumed to exist in any audit. So the first is management's effective ability to override controls because of their status within the organisation and the permissions that they often have within systems. And I accept that that is a fraud risk in this audit, as it is in any, but don't have any particular procedures over and above those that I would normally carry out on any audit to detect those kinds of instances. And the second presumed fraud risk is that in respect of management's ability to manipulate or misstate income and expenditure recognition, particularly around the year end. But as we've noted in the paper, I rebut that risk, so I don't consider that to be a significant risk for the IJB. That said, there are three other risks, which are on the next page, page 82, which are at a lower level, so they don't meet that definition under audit standards of a significant risk, but nonetheless, I think they are those areas where our audit will have a focus and take up a particular amount of our time and consideration, and therefore I set out here what the risk is. And when we bring back our final report, I will give you the conclusions of our work in those areas. So the first is around completeness and accuracy of expenditure and ensuring that the information is provided by the partner bodies to enable Alex to prepare the accounts appropriately. The second is financial sustainability. That is high on the profile of Audit Scotland and a focus area across bodies as we've been through the pandemic, and it remains a focus area, and particularly in terms of pressures on the IJB and its finances. And that is linked with the last point, which is around grant funding accounting. And that really links into a lot of the things that we've just been talking about around additional funding, which is sitting in reserves, either earmarked or unearmarked. And our audit will have a focus on those one-off grants and one-off additional funding streams, the terms and conditions that they come along with, and the extent to which they've been complied with. So there can be judgment over whether the income should be recognised in the accounts or not, how the balance should be presented at year end, and then the actual application of the funding to specific purposes in some cases. The rest of our report, all I would highlight is that there is a section that explains our approach to the wider scope of public audit. So that goes beyond the finances and the numbers to consider financial management and governance. I've already outlined the proposed amendment to our audit timetable. And the last thing I would point out is that our fee is consistent with that we've had in prior years, just a small uplift, a few £100 in line with Audit Scotland's proposed fee. The board will have a new auditor from next year end. It won't be KPMG. It will be either another firm or Audit Scotland. And I suppose I would just highlight at the moment, I don't know what your fee will be, but I know based on the feedback that I've had as one of the bidders participating in the process overall, that I would suggest you should expect a significant increase in the fee, as most bodies will, and that could be 30, 40, 50% easily. So just to give you fair warning of what to expect next year. There's nothing else really I need to draw your attention to, so happy to just stop there.
Okay, kept the bad news to the end there. Okay, no, that's really helpful, Michael, and a clear report on what's intended. Don't see anybody signalling. Can I invite any comments, questions? Okay, the timetable, just reflecting back. So we've got that's really helpful, set out on page 93. So that's what we can expect to come through. Okay. And there was a note made earlier, Luann, I think you were talking about the procurement process and the external audit. Do you want to repeat your question around that?
Yeah, I suppose I'd be interested in knowing if the external audit will be able to comment on the capacity within the IJB team to, well, firstly prevent fraud, but then to identify and address fraud appropriately. Yeah, so more about capacity. Yeah.
Yes, we will likely comment by year end. I would say, though, we don't specifically test any procurements, so we don't look at compliance from an external audit perspective, or we haven't traditionally. It can be within our scope, and sometimes we do that type of controls testing, but not always. And largely in this case, it's because we are effectively relying on the partner body's processes and controls. I think we have commented in previous years on fraud risk in procurement in particular, and the difficulty that the joint board effectively has in being able to assure itself around the controls of partner bodies, because it was an area of risk highlighted by Audit Scotland. So I might just reflect on our previous reports and include similar commentary this year end.
Thank you. Can I ask at page 87, where you're looking at financial sustainability, and that's going to be quite complex for IJBs going forward. We've touched on the need to invest across the whole system, if you like, in terms of transformation to make shifts that can make us sustainable in meeting demand. And we've touched on the workforce. So just wanted you to say a little bit more about what your focus is in terms of determining financial sustainability.
So in this context, there's probably two aspects. First is the more nuts and bolts of the approach that finance team takes to forward planning in terms of cash flows effectively, and ability to understand demand pressures and costs and factor that into budget setting. And then the wider scope element, which I think it's fair to say I can give the start of my view already, and this isn't unique just to Aberdeen Joint Board, but others that I work with, is that I think the consideration we give is to whether there's capacity within the officers of the IJB to effectively be able to support the board in that future look and planning, and I think that is a challenge. And one that obviously involves working very closely with partners, because they will have the ability to share insight into that type of strategic change. But I think there is a need for IJBs in general to bolster their own capacity for planning and change, to be able to affect that oversight role. And it's difficult to separate that between a board and an officer level.
Yeah. Okay, but it would be interesting to see your perspective looking into the organisation on that. and we touched it quite early on in the meeting in relation to the finance capacity around Alex's role, which presumably comes into the mix of that. Yeah. Okay, well, that's helpful. Okay, are there any other questions or comments to help us just understand what we're going to be getting here? Okay, no, I think it's all clear to us. So thank you very much for the report. And page 71 of the additional pack, we're asked to note the contents of the report. So we're happy to do that, and with the further clarification that you've given us. So thank you very much. Okay, can we go to item 7.1? So we've got the governance standards for signposted organisations. Alison.
Thanks, John. Yeah, this is, we've sort of reworded this now to a signposting protocol. The rationale or the reasoning for the report originated from information contained in the autism strategy about one particular organisation that was funded by the Scottish Government, that people with autism and their families and carers could obtain advice and guidance from. It was reported to us that one individual had had a negative experience with this organisation, and it was suggested that a protocol of this nature be developed. So as you're aware, the original version which we consulted on, and apologies that it was a little bit late, we had taken quite a robust approach to thinking about what sort of arrangements we might need to check, if you like, before we deliberately and specifically signposted clients, patients to such organisations. But we've consulted with ACFO and consulted with the individual who raised the issue in the first place, and there's I think what we're trying to do now with this report is bring a bit of balance, just recognising that, you know, there's a lot of ways that people can access support from organisations, and you know, to a great extent, if we don't commission an organisation or grant fund an organisation to provide a particular service, that you know, there's not a huge amount that we can do to influence people's own choice. And I think what we're trying to do here is ensure that if we are specifically mentioning an organisation within one of our documents, that that the officer who's providing that recommendation has undertaken some kind of research, I guess, and assessment of what support that organisation can provide, and also that we make sure that we provide as much information about that organisation as possible and enable people to make their own decisions as to whether that using that organisation is for them, and whether they would get benefit from that. So that's the protocol that's in front of you today. I hope that background perhaps helps a little bit in understanding why it's here and what we were trying to do with it. And I guess it's I'm happy to answer any questions that the committee may have.
Okay, thank you, Alison. Yeah, and you're right, it's now a protocol. I was thinking of the draft that I'd seen in terms of standards. So, okay, can I open that up for comments and questions? And I think the idea is that depending on what the committee is saying today, you'll then reflect on that and bring something back as a finalised recommendation. Luann.
Thank you, and thanks for this, Alison. I do remember this being discussed a while back. My question was going to be, have ACFO and the carer rep been around this? And you've already answered that, and presumably they're content that this is a reasonable protocol as it stands. And my second question is just more about the practicalities of, you know, it says we'll encourage feedback and put a mechanism in place for that. That's potentially quite a big piece of work because there's so many of these organisations. So just to get a sense of what the thinking is, or would ACFO do some of that for us, you know, just the practicalities of that. And secondly, on the retrospective issue, I understand that you wouldn't want to be looking back, but would it be built into reviews so that these, you know, that there's a way of updating that as a new protocol as services and pathways are reviewed? Would be that's kind of what's in my mind, those three areas. Thank you.
Thanks, Luann. You might need to keep me right on the three areas as we go through. But yeah, just to confirm initially that both ACFO and the carer rep who raised the issue initially were involved in the development of the paper, and both the first version and indeed the second version, I guess was developed mainly on their feedback and their comments. Now, ACFO did have some more comments on the second version of the paper, but it was mainly around about the covering report, and we were still referencing governance standards and things like that in there. So again, they were thinking, you know, whilst the actual protocol had been softened to their satisfaction, the covering report perhaps still reflected something a bit more robust. So I'll be able to, I'm just back from leave this morning, so I'll be able to go back to Jane and just confirm some of that for her, and also feedback from the committee's decision today. But yes, in terms of encouraging feedback, I think so that was something that the carer rep was keen that we incorporated, because I think she felt that there was no avenue for her to do that. Now ACFO have made it clear that they wouldn't be putting any new or different arrangements in place, and they also pointed out that not all of these organisations would necessarily be affiliated to ACFO anyway. So I think what we were trying to do there is, as I say, this links back to when we specifically mentioned an organisation. So it's those kind of circumstances. So I think what we would be looking to do would be to say, you know, if we are doing that in future, if we are specifically signposting to one particular organisation as opposed to others, you know, we would be saying when we do that we would encourage people who use that organisation to feed back to us of their experiences, and I think there would be something there about us linking with that organisation itself, just to understand, you know, how many people have used their services, etc. So I understand what I share your concern around about the volume of work that might create, but as I say, we're not intending that this is for every organisation that is used by people. It's only those that we decide to specifically and deliberately signpost people to. There's lots of information out there about lots of different organisations, the Scottish Services Directory, Alice, the Aberdeenshire system. You know, there are lots of different sources where people could identify an organisation that they might go seek help from, but we're not specifically endorsing any of these. This protocol I'm suggesting is only for ones that we, like we did in the autism strategy. If we're specifically mentioning that one organisation, then we would only be invoking this protocol for that type of scenario. And sorry, your last, it was about retrospective checking. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. you know, and I think, you know, we mentioned that organisation in the autism strategy. We can't sort of take that back, and I have to say that this is the one and only circumstance that we have that this is any issue has been raised with us. So on the balance of a kind of risk assessment, we feel that it wouldn't be appropriate to go back and do any kind of retrospective checking, but we will ensure that in future, if we are specifically doing anything within any of our strategies or any of our documentation that we send out to folks, signposting to a particular service, we will make sure that we've undertaken a similar protocol to the one that's proposed, or you know, follow whichever protocol is approved, to make sure that we don't come across this situation again.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just come back? Just one
Sure.
thing then. How will staff know about this protocol and when they should use it? I suppose because it's potentially a lot of people involved.
Yeah, that's something we'll want. So as I said, it came about as a result of something within a strategy. So that strategy development or policy development, that is normally all governed through my team. So obviously, if a protocol is approved, then we will make sure that everyone knows about that. We'll communicate that in the normal way. But particularly within my team, I'll make sure that folks who are supporting that policy and strategy development are well aware of it, and that's built into the process of development.
Okay, I don't see anybody else. So can I know it's really an operational thing for you to implement this, but it's just to get clear in my head. So sorry, this is a bit pedantic. So a new organization is what? Literally a new organization, or new to being signposted to? The latter, okay.
It's the latter, John, yeah.
Right. How do you know what is already being signposted to, and therefore what is a new organization?
So as I say, that would be whatever is in any strategy or policy that we have put out there. And as I say, I guess that's why we are part of the reason why we're suggesting we're not going to go back and retrospectively check whatever we've already said. This will be for going forward only. So it's just
but if I'm a member of staff and then somebody might benefit from being referred to X, where do I find out whether X is already okay, or whether I've got to do that research?
So if that's what a member of staff discussing with an individual, whether you know to go and seek out help from an organisation, that's not something that would necessarily be covered by this protocol. As I say, it's got to be something that's very specific, that we as an organisation are signposting people to, either through a strategy or a policy or a specific communication. So it's not for that level of what we can do is make sure that the sense of the protocol in that, you know, individuals shouldn't necessarily only be signposting to one organisation. They should be referring people to sources of information, such as the Scottish Services Directory or ALICE or others, to, you know, even just Googling organisations and finding them that way, and encouraging people to undertake their own research and helping them find. We would only specifically, or we should only be specifically signposting to one organisation if we are specifically commissioning them or funding them to provide that support.
Okay, so in my head then we've got three types of organisation. We've got commissioning and grant funding organisations. We've got this kind of protocol organizations, and then out with that, it's more informal signposting.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I understand that now. So this is just a question. I don't expect you to answer it now, but I would then be wondering, this second category, which is what the protocol captures, but we're saying we're not endorsing them. I'm just wondering legally how that stands up. So again, it's an operational issue, I think, but it would be interesting to know a legal view on that, because it is formalized to a degree and we are routing people towards it. Can we at the same time say, but we're not endorsing it? It's just that is a practical question, I think, which...
Yeah, so Jess was involved in the consultation. I don't think I specifically asked her that question, but she was content with the final protocol as it stands. But I can go back and ask her that question specifically.
Okay, so I don't want to get involved in the operations, but that's the kind of stuff that would come to mind. But that would affect us in terms of reputation. So I think that's a fair ask if you could go and do that. Okay, and then my final practical question is, somebody goes on the list. Is the intention that that would be reviewed in a time period so that that's kept up to date?
I think, to be honest, John, we wouldn't be referring to a list, and in actual fact, I think in future we would be advising staff not to specifically signpost to one organisation. So we wouldn't be, it's not like a approved user list or anything like that. You know, it's purely and simply about having a thought process prior to putting anything into likes of a strategy to signpost people to. I think we would always want to err on the side of, there's lots of organisations out there, you know, do your own research and see which one's best for you, rather than going down that route of deliberately and specifically mentioning one particular organisation.
Okay, thanks. So I don't see anybody else signalling. So that's some feedback on this draft. If you can bring back a finalised version, if there's time, I would, and given that there may be one or two different people around this, I'd be happy if you have, when you have the draft paper, that you share that with all of the committee members, because that would be more useful to get any feedback on that at that point, so that we can try and finalise it at the next committee. Would that be helpful?
Yep, that will be helpful, thank you.
Okay, thank you then. So on the basis of that, going to the recommendation at page 87, we've considered the draft and provided comment. So we're agreeing in principle this as a basis, and the final version will come to us at the next meeting. Okay, well, thank you, Alison, and thanks for the work that you've been doing around this. Okay, if we can go on to the next item, which is the leadership team objectives and reporting framework. And is this you as well, Alison? Yeah.
It is initially. I'll kick this one off, John, and then I'll pass on to Michelle, who's here specifically for this paper today, and also to Alex Bertram, who's joined the meeting. I'm not sure if you noticed Alex, but Alex is a colleague from NHS Grampian Health Intelligence, and the dashboard that is attached to the report is Alex's work. So she's going to, that's based on it's from the Tableau system, and Alex is hopefully going to be able to provide a demonstration of that interactive dashboard as part of the update. A couple of things that I want to say initially. I understand our performance framework was supposed to be an appendix to this report, and for some reason I think in all that some of the changes it it wasn't circulated. So Michelle will probably refer to that in her introduction, and perhaps we can get that circulated after the meeting today. The other thing that I want to mention in particular is that we approved these leadership team objectives in March, I think it was, or February. I've lost track now of the time. And that was in advance of our strategic plan. As you know, we're working on our strategic plan at the minute, and we are aiming to bring a fairly detailed delivery plan for over the 3-year period of the strategic plan, which details specific actions. So the leadership team objectives are incorporated in these, so it may well be that when the strategic plan and the delivery plan is approved in June, that the leadership team objectives reporting is expanded to include year 1 of the actions in the delivery plan. Apologies, I'm talking about something that you haven't had sight of, but hopefully what how I've described it there makes sense, and it all will become clear when the strategic plan itself is submitted for approval in June. So in the meantime, we've been trying to develop a dashboard and a means of reporting regularly and capturing progress on the leadership team objectives that were approved, and that's the essence of the report that's in front of you today. But I'll pass on to Michelle now and Alex for her part of it, and then I'll hopefully join in and be able to answer any questions that the committee may have after Michelle and Alec have done their bit. So I'll pass to Michelle now, if that's okay.
Fine.
Yeah, so as Alison's kind of succinctly said there, the document that was attached to Appendix A outlined how we intend to report our progress made on achieving our leadership team objectives. It was quite a short document, so it won't take too long to kind of go through it just now, because I'm obviously quite mindful there'll be a few rumbly tummies going on. So the Health Intelligence has developed a dashboard which demonstrates our objectives and displays the progress that we've made on a number of measures. And the intention would be for that dashboard, alongside a covering report which would give context and highlight any risks or areas of concern, to be presented to RAPC on a quarterly basis. And we would ask for that to be added to the business planner going forward from August. So the dashboard is currently in draft, and it's been furnished with some of the baseline data that we know for our measures. And Appendix B gives some of the context and explanation around those measures and how those figures have been calculated. As work on some of those objectives progress or start in some cases, further measures are likely to be added in support of them. So the dashboard that you see today is, maybe 40–50% complete. But as some of these objectives take shape and progress gets made, more measures will be included within it. It's a culmination of both quantitative and qualitative information. So some of it will be subjective. We've got some RAG statuses in there and things, whereas some of it is very much calculated from the likes of Track here and other sources. But I suppose it's probably far more interesting to look at something. So I'll probably hand over to Alex, and she can show you the dashboard that's currently in draft and talk you through it.
You're on mute, Alex.
So this is an example of what it will look like when you log into Tableau. The report has been designed so that if people don't have access to Tableau, because we know that not everybody does, it can be downloaded as a PDF and attached to an email or anything like that and shared around. There is only one interactive element at the minute, which is just changing this to a percentage rather than a figure, but the strategic plan dashboard is a lot more interactive. This one specifically is designed so that it can be shared with all the different stakeholders. So for each each objective, we have the title and the colour of this box. I mean, it's just a sample at the minute because obviously these have not been started. The title will be coloured as per the RAG status for the overall objective, and then directly underneath we have each of the work streams and their RAG status as well. Again, these are just for illustration, the colours at the minute. And then in each section we will have the metrics that have been decided, and then this kind of light pink and this light yellow, this ties into the strategic plan aims, and just to kind of tie it all together and give more of a system of reporting than a single dashboard. So we'll have our baseline and then the current performance for the current quarter, and then we'll have some trend data as well for each of the metrics that are available to us. So the bulk of this, these are from Tracker, this is the care homes from Churas, and then there'll be some things that are sent in from the partnership themselves. These are placeholders at the minute for things like the workforce data that's currently ongoing as well. Kind of the brief overview, but if anyone has any questions or anything, just feel free to jump in.
Okay, thank you. So one question I would have, and I know we'll see the detail and we'll be able to digest it better once we get that. So will there be commentary on this? I mean, it's really helpful to have the detail, but we can end up in our role going down all sorts of different rabbit holes, whereas it's the commentary of what this means in relation to the objective that is key, so that helps us then interpret the individual pieces of information. Is that the intention?
Yeah, so the intention would be that this would be submitted alongside a covering report that would give that detail, and I suppose join those dots together. Good,
that's fine. So that's my key question in it. Do people have questions and comments on this? Luann?
Yeah, probably just a few comments. I really appreciated Alison's introduction because I was struggling to think how it fits with the strategy, but how that's been explained is this is going to evolve, and the strategic objectives will then, the leadership team objectives will need to be updated according to what's also in the strategic plan. So that's really helpful because I was struggling a little bit, and I suppose I think it's like a comment I made earlier about maybe having a seminar on this for the IJB for members to understand what it is, what's our strategic intent, and what this data, how we're tracking our milestones towards achieving the strategic intent, and what the operational data gives us assurance on, because they're different things. And like John said, I think we could get lost in the weeds of how many beds we've got here and there, when actually from a strategic perspective, we just need to be tracking more the milestones to those longer term goals. So I see this, it's great that this is being developed, and I think it's going to be a really helpful tool, but for me, it just has to sit, it just has to join up with the strategic plan and the intent around that. And I think maybe some introduction of this to the wider IJB would be helpful, just to understand why this data, what this data is telling us and how we're going to track progress. So maybe another seminar topic as well for the new IJB post May as well. But thank you. I'm sure it's going to be really good. It's just need that time to join it all up.
What I would maybe add in there is that our intention is to develop a very similar dashboard for the strategic plan as well. So hopefully that consistency across how the data will be presented for the strategic plan and for the leadership team objectives might assist that, I suppose, line through it as well.
Okay, and can I ask, just in terms of the performance report, is that a third strand?
So that would, I see Alison's come off mute there. She's maybe wanting to take that.
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to sort of jump in there. So I think hopefully, as I say, when we do present the strategic plan with the attached delivery plan with all the actions at the back, the delivery plan also is looking at the measures for those. And I think in future, we would be wanting one performance report that covers, because what we've tried to do is incorporate the leadership team objectives as actions within the delivery plan. So the strategic plan performance report will actually encompass both. So you'll well, the way I envisage it is it will be one report, because I think that will be less confusing. So that's my interpretation of it. I don't know whether the committee would find that useful.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful if that works. Otherwise, we're trying to go across 3 different things, whereas, like Luann's saying, we've got a strategic intent and things could brought into that. But I am aware that on the performance report there are national targets as well. So if those can be incorporated, that's fine.
Yeah, and it's that national level that's the strategic intent, if you like, that's where we would be looking to get to. But it may well be that there will be other indicators, operational indicators below that helps us determine what our delivery against that strategic intent is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that's fine. And not to take it off down another track, but there may be that we have to challenge some of those national targets as well, if they don't work on the ground. So that's fine. Luann.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I had to just nip out for a second, but just to give my support to trying to bring it all into one report, I think that would be really helpful for the IJB members, especially thinking this isn't something that IJB members are involved in every day. So the more it can be clear and straightforward to understand, I think that'll be really helpful. And for me, it's about the clear milestones for our strategic intent, and knowing what they are. And they might just be a few, we might have for the year or something, it might not be lots of milestones. And then maybe underneath that, like you're saying, Alison, the operational indicators that give a little bit more detail, but actually our focus needs to be on that strategic direction, and there's an operational team doing all the operational stuff, and we need to make sure that we're focusing on the right area. So that would be my ask, that we just have that, but recognise, it's going to take a bit of time to get that evolving and worked up.
Thanks, Luann, and yeah, I have to apologise to my team here as well, because it is evolving minute by minute, and I haven't necessarily involved them in all of those discussions. So yeah, I've still to catch up with the team in terms of the way I see it shaping up now that we've got a kind of clearer idea of what the strategic delivery plan might look like. So sorry guys, but we'll do a bit more development on this, and I'm sure it will all become clear for the IJB meeting in June.
Okay, thank you very much. And no, I do appreciate this being brought to us in early course, even though it's kind of emerging, if you like. And can I thank Michelle and Alex for the work that you're doing on this, and for bringing this to us today. And we look forward to how this comes together. I think if it can be incorporated into some early briefing for the board going forward, that will help us get our head around it, so that we can be properly focused in the committee as we look at it. I think you're saying, Michelle, from August we can look forward to receiving this. Okay, so on that basis, at page 9321, we're asked to note the basically the reporting framework, the way this is emerging and evolving, and we'll look forward to a further report. Did you say you're going to bring something back in June, or would that be in August?
No, it'll be in August. We would need that time to get our Q1 figures together and published. So.
Okay, but it'll be June that we'll look at the strategic plan with the IJB.
Yeah. That we're planning a session with the IJB on the strategic plan that also incorporates the performance measures. So the IJB will have advanced sight of the more developed report, if you like, but the first reporting cycle, as Michelle says, will be August.
Okay, right. Well, I look forward to getting this and being able to see how it all joins up. That would be good. Thank you very much. So that takes us just about to the end of the meeting. I apologise that we've gone slightly over time, but we've got no exempt business. Then at item 9, confirmation of assurance. So on the business that we've dealt with today, is the committee content to confirm its confirmation of assurance on the business that we've received? Okay.
Yes, great.
Thank you very much. So if we can minute that, and just simply to note the date of the next meeting, which will be the 23rd of June. So that's us concluded today. Thank you everybody for your contributions, and once more, Philip, all the very best to you for the future.
Thank you. Well, I hope I get down to the fish lady. I hope she'll have still have some fish left for me.
Oh, we'll feel really guilty if you're not getting.
I bet you will.
Okay.